This is called A Day for Rememberin, inspired by the true events of the first Memorial Day. A Day for Rememberin. Dark and sad will be the hour to this nation when it forgets to pay grateful homage to its greatest benefactors, the loyal soldiers who imperiled all for country and freedom. Frederick Douglass, 1871, Decoration Day speech, Arlington National Cemetery, Virginia. In 1861, the United States of America was torn apart by a civil war, with the northern states, the Union, fighting the southern states, the Confederacy. The North wanted to keep the country intact, both North and South, and to ensure that all people were equal by abolishing slavery. The South did not agree, and these states sought to establish themselves as their own country, separate from the North, the Confederate States of America. They also sought to keep slavery. The war was fought for 4 years until 1865, when the Confederacy surrendered to the Union. The United States remained united, and slavery was abolished. Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, was established to honor those who gave their lives while fighting in the Civil War. The holiday has since evolved to commemorate all American military personnel who have died in any and all wars. This is a story of what many consider the first Memorial Day celebration. 9 days in a row, Papa up early and gone again. I still can't go with him, though. He said, "Eli, school's where you need to be, reading and counting." But I am counting right here. Day 9. He said, "Important work has to be done, man's work." I rose on my toes then, pushing out my chin, stretching as tall as my 10-year-old self could, but it made no difference. I imagine him out there standing up to folks who spit in our faces, call us names, or try to run us out our home, mad 'cause we aren't enslaved no more. Or I think of him putting out fires and keeping order with the 21st Colored Infantry, Union soldiers, brown like us, who marched up Meeting Street, holding their heads high in victory, especially the ones who'd been enslaved here in Charleston. They were some of the first to come when the mayor surrendered the city to the Union. A, B, C, D, E. No use begging to follow Papa, though. Mama will only fuss. "Eli, you now have the hard-earned right to learn, and it's what's going to get you beyond. Master's locked away learning 'cause knowledge is its own freedom. You're going to school, and no more words are getting spilt about it." Before the war, worry never let my insides alone, always scared that Mama or Papa would get sold away, never to come back home. But today, Papa comes home as night covers the sky, almost looking worse than after toiling in Master's fields. But those days in the fields are over. Papa said, "Unlike some, we aren't going back because we aren't enslaved no more." "We were digging and building and painting," he says after summer. Digging, building, painting, but Papa isn't giving no more answers. "Wake up, Eli. Today you're coming with me." Day 10. I sprang out of bed like beans in a skillet and jumped into my breeches. Something important must be happening if Papa is letting me miss even 1 second of school, my hard-earned right, and Mama isn't putting up no fuss. With molasses-smeared cornbread sliding down my throat, I race to catch Papa. His long strides are met by others as more men join us, their boots crunching against pebbles on the hard road. My new schooling helps me count 28 men in all. Shoulders back, chests out, they stomp along, ready to do the real important business Papa talks about, business he thinks I'm old enough to do now, too. "You need to see the work we's doing before it's all done," he says. We strut through the entrance of the planters' race course, where white folks used to watch mighty horses run before the war. But it isn't a race course no more. For a while, the Confederates made it a jail. Mama and ladies from church used to sneak food to the Union soldiers held prisoner there. Skinny and sickly, those men hardly had more clothes than the most lonesome slave. A newspaper man said those poor souls had no covering but the sky, and that they were heartsick, homesick, sick in body, sick in life, all because they fought against slavery and our God-given right to be free. So over the evening paper, Mama had learned to read in secret while enslaved. She promised, we'll share every morsel we got till we got no more. But the living are gone now, and the dead lie by our feet. Without a word, Papa and the other men get to digging, hammering, and cutting wood. Papa points to the fence where some of my schoolmates have joined their papas too. Help with the whitewashing, Eli. I drag my feet, though, wanting to stay by Papa's side, but he rushes around doing more work in a minute than he'd done in 3 hours on Master's land. An old usher from our church pushes a painting brush in my hand, and I get to working too. As the sun beats our backs, the men sing in heavy, deep voices that rattle the dirt. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. When the sun starts slipping behind the trees, they raise an arch. Tired pinches my shoulders and my palms blaze, crisscrossed with tiny scrapes from a day's hard toil. But I don't pay the sting or ache no mind. We've done good work for the soldiers who lost their lives for our freedom. The next morning, before the roosters first gawks, I leap up. But I'm not going to school again today. None of us colored children are. This day is that important. My best mended pants and cleanest shirt wait on my blanket. Mama gathers up her basket full of mayflower bundles. Papa straightens his hat, and we leave our yard just as our neighbors leave theirs. Black faces, more than I've ever seen together, fill the streets with bouquets, crosses, and wreaths. I'm not sure a flower is left unpicked in Charleston. My schoolmates carry roses and hawthorns, but since I'm fastest at learning my numbers and letters, I get to carry the flag right out in front. I stomp, knees high, like the important colored soldiers did up Meeting Street. Mama strides in her best calico dress behind us with the women, grinning, proud. I can't see Papa, but I know he is somewhere in the quilt of black, brown, and white faces. In lines stretching longer than a mile, we cross onto the old race course, singing with our fullest hearts. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. Although we sing about John Brown, we are really singing for all the buried Union soldiers, martyrs of the race course. After the last word is sung, quiet comes, our feet shushing across the sandy soil. We circle the fresh dirt mounds with sweet-smelling petals of rose, lilac, and jasmine swirling to the ground. Thousands of hands sprinkle thousands of spring blossoms. The graves become a bed of petals and tears. The flag flaps in the breeze when I hand it off, as if waving goodbye to the Union soldiers finally at peace. Pastors preach sacrifice. Abolitionists proclaim freedom, and officers bay at us to remember. Even though we are sad, we are celebrating too. My heart rests easy now. Me, Mama, and Papa can't never be sold away no more, and I'm getting my schooling its own freedom, like Mama said, so my insides feel all good. While breaking bread, we listen to more speeches about the martyrs of the race course and freedom. Blurry eyes praise a Union brigade marching round the pond of blossoms. There's lots of head nodding and mm-hms as families gather round the ground stand remembering. shedding tears and giving thanks above. That flag never stops waving, but all my old slave time worry flies away. And as the moon joins in, we leave the race course with empty hands and near bursting hearts, hoping those Union soldiers, hugged by Charleston's sweetest blooms, know we will never forget what they've given of themselves for the priceless gift of our liberty. And then here's the author's note that explains that she came across this image of 200 or so black children getting ready for what looked like a parade. And so she looked into researched it and found an article about the first Decoration Day. She says there's over a dozen places that lay claim to this distinction, but there's a story from Charleston, South Carolina at the end of the Civil War that caught her attention. A procession of 10,000 mostly newly freed enslaved people led by almost 3,000 black children. And there's more to the story, and if you want, you can pause it and read that. But it talks about how Decoration Day, which is now known as Memorial Day, we remember the men and women in the armed forces who died in service to our country. And it's important to consider the significance of the gesture of these once enslaved people towards the soldiers who had lost their lives fighting in part for their freedom. Above all else, that May Day was a gathering to honor and to remember those who, as Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, gave the last full measure of devotion. And then here's another article about the roots of Decoration Day in Charleston, South Carolina, and you could pause and read that as well if you're interested. And then there's a timeline that tells about how it all happened. And then other cities with claims of being the birthplace of Memorial Day are Columbus, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, Carbondale, Illinois, Columbus, Mississippi, Waterloo, New York, Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Petersburg, Virginia, and Warrenton, Virginia. And there's more notes about where she got the information to write this book. And I hope you enjoyed that book, A Day for Rememberin', inspired by the true events of the first Memorial Day. So I hope you subscribe and come back often. Join me again.